The galactic Concord chamber shimmered with a spectrum of alien bioluminescence, walls that pulsed with the colors of the attending species, vast hollow crystals hanging from the ceiling, reflecting distant starlight. Ambassador Elias Vance stood alone at the center of the spiral platform, a man dwarfed by the grandeur of the chamber and the scale of the civilizations it represented. He adjusted his diplomatic sash, the dark blue of Terran unity embroidered with a single silver thread, the symbol of Earth's promise, unity through resolve. He raised his voice, clear and firm, not loud but impossible to ignore. Esteemed delegates, we meet not as strangers but as survivors of history's darkest storms. This council is proof that peace is possible. Murmurs of acknowledgement followed. Some sincere. Others rehearsed. He continued. 60 years ago, humanity arrived at this table. We were fragmented, scarred, reckless. But we listened. We learned. We offered not weapons but words. Across the chamber, Archon Vral of the Zyrak Dominion leaned back, his obsidian-scaled claws drumming lightly on the edge of his podium. The movement was subtle, but to Vance, it was a taunt. Vral smirked, fangs showing. You also offered treaties, and your appetite for influence. Vance didn't flinch. Influence earned through contribution. Through honor. The chamber shifted. Delegates exchanged glances, Zalari and Tenny twitched, Kelt symbiotes blinked as one. Council Chair Olerin, an aged Thalary, clicked his jaw. Let us proceed. But the chamber dimmed suddenly. A red light pulsed across the walls. Emergency protocol. A collective breath caught in every chest. Then, the feed came through. Live. The holodisplay burst open, projecting raw footage into the heart of the chamber. New Avalon. Terran colony in the Orion Reach. Cities burning. Skyships falling. Screams and static. Fire raging across domes. The camera shook violently before collapsing in white. Silence. Delegates turned to Vance. He stood frozen, eyes locked on the fading image of a child's toy drifting through zero gravity, its stuffing charred. Chair Olerin's voice was brittle. We request explanation. From the Dominion. Archon Vral rose slowly, posture regal. Zyrak forces are unaware of any such action. If the Terran colony has suffered, perhaps it is due to local unrest. Vance's voice, when it came, was low. Unrest doesn't leave plasma scoring consistent with Zyrak torpedoes. Vral tilted his head. Is the human diplomat accusing us? Vance stepped forward, shoulders squared. I am demanding answers. The chamber cracked open in noise. Objections, support, fear, confusion. Chair Olerin banged the staff of order. Enough! A formal investigation will be launched. Until then, this council is adjourned. The delegates filed out in a swirl of robes, exocets, and quiet avoidance. Vance remained behind, staring at the empty hollow feed, the last frame frozen mid-collapse. Flames. Screams. Then black. The solitude of his quarters was deafening. Earth's standard gravity. Spartan furnishings. A window to the stars. He ignored the messages piling in, Earth's High Command, the Terran Colonial Office, his family. Instead, he opened the secure archive. Footage replayed. A dome breached. Oxygen ignited. A woman reached for a child through a window before both were engulfed. Another recording. A fleet descending. The Zyrak crescent on their hulls unmistakable. Vance leaned forward, head in his hands. His console chimed again. Audio only. Ambassador, came a firm female voice. General Rhodes of the Terran Defense Command. You are authorized to activate Protocol Theta. Our fleets are ready to retaliate. He closed his eyes. Not yet. Elias. Not yet, he repeated, colder now. Give me 48 hours. She hesitated. After that, the brass won't wait. The line cut. Next day. Back in the chamber. Fewer delegates made eye contact. Vance took the floor. His voice was steady, but steel-edged each word. I stand not just as a representative of Earth, but as a father, a brother, A human being whose people lie dead on a burning world. We demand action. Chair Olerin sighed. The investigation is ongoing. The proof is already here. Vance activated his slate. Footage again, this time enhanced. Zyrax ships. Serial codes. Weapon signatures. Satellite telemetry. Murmurs rose. Some nodded. Others shrank into silence. Archon Vral's nostrils flared. Do you accuse based on edited images? Lies spun by grieving apes? Vance snapped. I accuse based on the truth your bombs etched into our soil. The chamber shifted again. The Zalari emissary clicked softly. If the Zyrak are guilty, we condemn their actions. But we must be careful. War benefits no one. Chair Olerin raised his hand. The council will vote. A few moments later, the result projected: postpone resolution. Begin 180 cycle investigation. A procedural death sentence. A stall tactic. Vance's breath itched, but he did not show it. He nodded once, turned, and walked out. The corridor outside the chamber was long, narrow, empty. Each step echoed like a countdown. He reached his private terminal. The lights above flickered. He didn't sit. Instead, he pressed his palm to the biometric pad. The console beeped once. Secure line engaged. He spoke, voice even. Begin resolution protocol Omega. Pause. Confirm. The AI responded. He looked out the window. The stars burned quietly, unaware. Confirmed. The first ships of Protocol Omega did not announce themselves with fanfare. They slipped into motion across the void like a held breath. Silent carriers, dark-hulled escorts, sensor ghosts that left no trail worth following. Humanity had learned long ago that the loudest threats invited preemptive strikes. Ambassador Elias Vance watched the deployment map in his quarters, eyes scanning arcs of blue lines and amber waypoints. The fleet's path curled around neutral lanes, avoiding Concord patrols. Not aggression. Not yet. Just position. His console chimed again. A new message, priority black. New Avalon, confirmed dead, 14,882. Missing, 2,104. Numbers, clean and cruel. His throat tightened anyway. He shut the screen off and stared at the stars through the window. They looked serene, like they had never watched civilizations burn. A soft tone sounded behind him. His aide, Lyra Juan, stepped inside. She didn't carry a date pad. That alone told him how bad it was. Elias, she said carefully. They're bringing in families. Survivors. People who were off-world when it happened. He didn't turn. How many? 800 so far. More arriving every hour. He nodded once, as if that could organize grief into something manageable. Lyra's voice dropped. The council is calling another closed session. They want you present. They're worried about Earth's response. Worried, Vance repeated, tasting the word. Not ashamed. Not angry. Worried. She held his gaze. They're afraid of a war they can't control. He finally faced her. So am I. Lyra hesitated, then asked the question she'd been swallowing for a day. Why are you still trying with them? Vance exhaled slowly. Because the alternative is simple. And simple gets people killed. He waved her away gently. Prepare the briefing. And tell medical to prioritize the children. Lyra's eyes softened. Understood. When she left, the room felt colder. Vance opened a private archive file he hadn't accessed in years. A dusty old recording labeled Martian Riots, Final Day. The footage was shaky. Smoke. Sirens. A street filled with bodies and red dust. He paused it on a figure half covered beneath a collapsed structure, his brother, Aaron, barely 22, his hand still outstretched as if reaching for something that had already slipped away. Vance didn't cry. He didn't even blink for a while. He just remembered the promise he'd made at the funeral, the one that had dragged him into diplomacy. No more pointless wars. Not if I can help it. Then the console rang, Live call, coded signature. He answered without greeting. General Rhodes appeared as a stern hologram, cropped hair, sleepless eyes, the weight of command carved into her jawline. Ambassador, she said. Earth is not patient today. I notice, Vance replied. Rhodes leaned forward. We intercepted Zyrak internal chatter. They're celebrating. Not publicly. Quietly. Like hunters sharing a joke. Vance held his composure by gripping the edge of his desk until his knuckles whitened. Send the file. It's already in your queue. Elias, we can strike their forward depots in 6 hours. Clean, surgical. We don't touch civilian sectors. Surgical strikes start wars, Vance said. They prevent future massacres, Rhodes countered. You asked for 48 hours? You have 22 left. Vance's voice stayed measured. If I can force the Council to act, the Dominion stands isolated. If we fire first, they paint us as the threat. Rhodes's expression hardened. You think they'll ever punish themselves? You think a room full of cowards will stand against a predator? Sometimes, Vance said softly. Cowards only need a reason to stop hiding. Rhodes stared him down. And if you're wrong? Vance didn't answer quickly. When he did, it was a whisper. Then we'll do what humans have always done when peace fails. Rhodes cut the call without another word. Vance sat still for several seconds, listening to the faint hum of the station's life support. He could almost hear the Concorde's heartbeat too, slow, indifferent, protected by distance. He rose and headed for the council chambers. The closed session took place in a smaller ring hall, dimly lit to accommodate species with light sensitivity. Around the oval table sat a dozen senior delegates, including Chair Olerin and the Zyrak representative, Vral himself, draped in midnight ceremonial armor, as if the entire galaxy were his court. Vance entered alone. Olerin clicked his jaw in greeting. Ambassador Vance? Thank you for coming. Don't thank me, Vance said, taking his seat. Tell me why the Dominion still breathes in this chamber. A ripple of discomfort passed through the hall. The Zalari elder flicked his antennae. The Kelt envoy's symbiotes tightened, sensing danger. Archon Vral smiled, slow and satisfied. Listen to him. The human tantrum continues. Vance didn't look away. 14,000 dead is not a tantrum. It's a crime. Olerin raised a calming hand. We are not denying tragedy. But we must proceed with caution. The Dominion holds half the eastern lanes. A direct accusation risks. Risks what? Vance cut in. Trade disruption? Political backlash? Your comfort? A Varnak delegate shifted, metal tendrils clinking. Ambassador, your species is newly influential. This is delicate. Vance leaned forward. Delicate is a child's spine under rubble. Delicate is oxygen boiling off a breached dome. Don't lecture me about delicate. Silence. Heavy, sharp. Olerin tried again. We propose a commission. Independent investigators. A neutral verdict. Vance slid his slate onto the table. Neutral. Like the serial codes burned into our satellites? He tapped once. The room filled with evidence, ship silhouettes, signature trails, weapon resonance, Dominion encryption fragments. The data didn't scream. It didn't need to. It stood like a witness who refused to be intimidated. The Zalari elder whispered. It is convincing. Vral's eyes narrowed. Convincing to those eager to believe humans. Vance turned his gaze directly onto the Archon. Say it with your full chest. You did it. Vral's claws clicked against the table. I say this, if a Terran colony fell, it fell because your species spreads too fast. You swarm worlds you do not understand. And you call it progress. Vance smiled once, humorless. That's not a denial. Olerin's voice trembled slightly. We cannot reach a verdict today. Vance's calm fractured, but only by a hair. You already did. The vote appeared on the center hollow. Delay resolution, 180 cycles. A stall. A burial. A polite way to let the Dominion win without anyone admitting it. Vance stood slowly. He did not shout. He did not slam the table. He simply gathered his slate and looked around the room, meeting eyes that slid away from him like guilty hands. "This is your piece," he said quietly. "A word you hide behind while predators feed." Olerin tried to speak. "Ambassador." Vance cut him off, voice low and controlled. "You will remember this moment. Because we will." He turned and walked out. In the corridor, Lyra waited, pale. "They did it," she guessed. Vance nodded. "They delayed." Lyra swallowed. "What now?" He didn't stop walking. "Now we make sure the next delay costs them sleep." He reached his private terminal, palm to the pad. The system recognized him. A single prompt appeared. "Escalation level?" Vance's eyes were steady, but something deeper moved behind them, old grief, new fury, all compressed into discipline. He typed one line, encrypted and absolute. "Omega continues. Prepare for revelation." The grand hall of the Galactic Concord was silent. Not in mourning, not in reflection, just the quiet of fear. Every delegate had returned, summoned for what Chair Olerin called an extraordinary motion of discourse. But everyone in the chamber knew what was coming. The humans had been provoked. And the man they sent to answer sat still, statuesque, eyes fixed on nothing. Elias Vance wasn't angry, not visibly. He didn't pace. He didn't raise his voice. But there was something tectonic beneath his skin, a presence that had shifted since his last address. The council felt it, though none could name it. Olerin cleared his throat, voice uncertain. "Ambassador Vance of Terra has requested full floor authority. No time limits." He glanced around. No one objected. Some feared what Vance might say. More feared what he might not. The lights dimmed. The dais lifted slightly, and Vance stepped forward into the center. He didn't address the chair. He addressed the room. "When we arrived in this chamber 60 years ago, we came as students. We came from a world still bleeding, still struggling to define peace. You, each of you, taught us how to speak in treaties instead of trenches. And for that, humanity is grateful." His voice was calm, almost reverent. "But something else happened. We learned your codes, your counsels, your caution. And somewhere in that process you forgot to learn about us." He let the silence settle. A few delegates looked away. "You believed we were a violent species forced into diplomacy. But the truth is, we are a diplomatic species born from violence. We cherish peace because we've buried too many generations without it." He tapped his slate. A holographic map of Earth bloomed midair. Wars, borders, disasters, treaties. 1,000 years of chaos folded into a pattern. "We earned our seat here not because we are powerful, but because we understand what happens when power is left unchallenged." He looked toward the Zyrak delegation. "And you left the Dominion unchallenged." Archon Vral did not respond. His reptilian eyes narrowed, but he remained seated. Watching. Vance continued, voice still level. "New Avalon is gone. Your investigation is a smokescreen. Your silence is complicity. And you expected us to endure it, as you always have." A murmur stirred among the Zalari and the Varnak. Unease growing. Vance didn't stop. "You mistake humanity's restraint for submission. You believe patience is the same as powerlessness. You are wrong." He stepped back and raised a hand. Outside the council's panoramic dome, the stars shifted. Dozens of shadows emerged against the void. Massive, angular, and unfamiliar to most in the room. Black armored hulls with no signal beacons. No drive trails. No fleet markings. Then they activated. Across the sky, one by one, cloaked human warships disengaged their stealth fields, silent giants now fully visible. Orbital platforms. Long-range dreadnoughts. Interceptor wings that hadn't been seen by any Concord registry. Gasps filled the chamber. Some delegates stood. Others froze. Vance turned slowly. "This is the Silencer fleet. We never paraded it. Never flaunted it. We kept it buried, because peace was worth more than fear." He paused. But peace has a price. And we paid it. He looked toward the stunned Celt representative. We sent envoys when others would have sent armies. To the Zalari. We negotiated through your plagues and sabotage. To the Varnak. We shared tech. Openly. Without conditions. Then to all. And you repaid us with silence when we bled. A low, thrumming hum echoed across the chamber as the ships outside adjusted formation, non-aggressive, but poised. Vance raised his voice a fraction. Not anger. Just clarity. We will not strike first. We will not become the monsters you secretly expected us to be. He turned to Vral, eyes sharp. But understand this, Archon. If another Terran child dies because of your games, there will be no delay, no debate, no cycle-long investigation. There will be only silence. Yours. Vral stood now, his pride scraped raw. You would threaten us in our seat of power? No. Vance's eyes were cold. I'm reminding you where power actually sits. A delegate from the Narum Collective, a normally neutral voice, rose from her dais. Ambassador, are you declaring war? No. Vance met her gaze. I am declaring the end of the illusion that we are unwilling to fight. Olerin gripped the arms of his chair. Earth's escalation is dangerous. Earth's escalation, Vance said, voice iron, is overdue. He stepped down from the dais. Not in triumph. Not in rage. Just a man who had said what needed saying. The room didn't move for a full minute. When Chair Olerin finally found his voice, it came in a rasp. This council will convene tomorrow to revisit Dominion status. It was not an answer. But it was more than silence. As Vance exited, Lyra waited in the corridor. Her face said it all, shock, awe, something close to fear. He didn't stop walking. Did it work? She asked. It wasn't supposed to, he said. Then what was it? A warning, Vance replied. And a mirror. Behind them, outside the station, the silencer fleet held position, silent, immense, unmoving. The council, for the first time in generations, had seen what restraint looked like when it ended. The council reconvened the next day. No pomp. No ceremonial overture. The air was brittle, taut with the tension of a galaxy that had finally glimpsed the storm hidden behind the Terran diplomat's suit. The chamber was half full when Elias Vance arrived. Not everyone had the courage to return. Delegates whispered as he passed, not out of disrespect, but recognition. Not fear, though some carried that too, but something heavier, consequence. For the first time, they understood that humanity was no longer the junior partner in this uneasy alliance. Not because of weapons. Not because of fleets. Because they finally said what no one else dared to. Chair Olerin stood slowly. He looked aged, worn down by decades of neutrality that now rang hollow. This emergency session is to reconsider the Dominion standing in the Concord, he announced. Archon Vral was already on his feet. Armor gleaming. Face unreadable. His voice, however, was fire. This is theater, he growled. A farce orchestrated by a species that claims peace while flashing fangs. Vance didn't rise. He remained seated, hands folded, gaze steady. No one forced you to shatter the treaty, he said calmly. You did that when you attacked New Avalon. You have no proof admissible under Concord law. Brawl snapped. You've mistaken delay for innocence, Vance replied. You've mistaken silence for protection. Chair Olerin spoke next, unexpectedly firm. You violated 3 binding statutes, Archon. The Council has seen the evidence. The cloak of ambiguity no longer fits. The Celt delegate, usually reserved, stood. The Zyrak Dominion has, for decades, manipulated trade routes, intimidated frontier systems, and now committed open aggression. We will not cover for them again. Others joined. One by one. The vote came quickly. Dominion immunity, revoked. Zyrak status, suspended indefinitely. War Crimes Tribunal, convened. The chamber held its breath. Vral didn't shout. He laughed. A slow, hollow sound that rang like metal against stone. You think this humiliates me? This only proves that the Terrans have infected your spine. He turned toward Vance, eyes blazing. Enjoy your moment, human. When your fleets rust and your alliances fracture, we will be waiting. Vance stood now. Only then. He walked down the central aisle and stopped 2 paces from Vrall. You were waiting before. We came anyway. Security moved in. Vrall resisted for a second, just enough to show pride, then allowed himself to be taken. The chamber didn't cheer. This wasn't triumph. It was necessary. Sometimes justice comes not as victory but as closure. Later, in a private observatory deck overlooking the station, Vance stood alone. No speeches. No cameras. Just silence and stars. Lyra approached, holding a datapad. The tribunal's first hearing begins in 2 days. Earth's delegation is leading the panel. He didn't respond. She moved beside him, watching the silhouettes of the silencer fleet drift slowly in orbit. They're asking what you want in return, she said after a pause. Reparations. Land grants. Trade priority. A seat on the inner council. Vance shook his head. We didn't come for spoils. Then why? His answer was quiet. To be heard. And to be believed. She nodded. They believe now. He turned from the stars. Not enough. She frowned. Then what do we do next? He stared out again. We rebuild. 3 weeks later, on the remains of New Avalon, Vance stepped onto scorched soil for the first time. The colony was gone, yes, but humanity had already begun laying the foundations for its return. Temporary shelters dotted the edges. Relief teams worked through the ash. Children laughed in makeshift classrooms built from cargo containers. The human spirit did what it always did. It adapted. It endured. It began again. A boy ran past, no older than 10, dragging a salvaged drone shell like a toy. He waved. You the guy from the speech? He asked. Vance blinked. I guess I am. You said we won't be quiet anymore. That's right. The boy smiled. Cool. He ran off again. Lyra stood behind him. The council sent a delegation. They want to help with reconstruction. He raised an eyebrow. Diplomacy by guilt? Diplomacy by respect, she corrected. Vance allowed a faint smile. We'll take it. He knelt in the dirt, scooping a handful of blackened earth. Beneath the soot, it was rich. Fertile. He remembered Earth's earliest colonies, how they rose from ruins worse than this. How every time someone told humanity to stay down, they built anyway. The stars hadn't changed. But the way the galaxy looked at humanity had. No longer unpredictable newcomers. No longer underestimated. Now they were something else entirely. A reminder. That peace is a choice. But some species must bleed to prove its value. And if ever forgotten again, humanity would remind them.